how to build survival seed vaults. You can go check that out. Just make sure that when you do it, that you are making sure you're getting seeds that are for your region. So these seeds that I showed you here, these are for Canada. These are for our latitude. So if you're in Canada, you can get these. I'll post links to places where you can get ones for your own region, but you may want to source them locally because your climate is going to be different even if it's on the same latitude, and you got to get stuff which was bred to grow where you live. Now, we got to talk about a variety of things today. One of these things is 50,000 North Koreans potentially going to the Ukraine to fight on behalf of the Russians. Is there credibility to that story? Well, it's from the Eurasia Times, which is a fairly reputable military intel news source. As I said, we got Russia loading up Doomsday seed vaults. That's a no-brainer as to why they're doing that. We got China declaring that they are preparing for a large-scale war. Direct words from the man himself, Xi Jinping. We got nuclear weapons moving on the map. We don't know where they are. In fact, in most people, it hasn't sunk in. Cold War 2.0 has not sunk in for a lot of people what that really means. Here's what it means. Here's a map. This is from, I believe, 2010. It's one of the most up-to-date resources we have to know where Russia's nuclear weapons are. Okay, and this is all information which was given up through the New START Treaty. You see, with the treaty between Russia and the United States, that allowed for both sides to audit each other's nuclear stockpiles. And in addition to that, Russia's mobile nuclear platforms that they can just move around. It's not like ours, okay, where they're just stationary in the ground in the missile silos in North Dakota and Montana. The Russians were smart enough to know that if the treaty ever is broken, and if we ever get out of this treaty, we're not going to want the United States to know where our nukes are. I mean, it's a no-brainer, right? So now we don't know where Russia's nuclear weapons are. And in fact, the public hasn't known for some time. That information is confidential, shared between Russia and the United States up until a month ago. So the Russians, who are smart enough to put all of their land-based nuclear weapons on mobile platforms, no longer have to tell the United States the coordinates. So the United States are tasked with trying to track these things with satellites or whatever other ways they're able to do it in order to ensure that the Russians aren't preparing to do a first strike. So this is why the suspension of the New START Treaty, it's not just about proliferation. It's all about information sharing, and that's probably the more important part, because really it doesn't matter if you have 2,000 nukes or 10,000. It doesn't matter if you can blow the world up one time or 10 times. If you blow it up once, that's all you got to do. So just a little factoid there for you. We got Belarus claiming that they might now get strategic nuclear weapons. Remember, a tactical nuclear weapon is short range. It typically has a lower yield in the kiloton range, up to about 150 kilotons, which is very large still, about 10 times the size of the Hiroshima bomb. Nonetheless, much smaller than the bigger strategic nukes that exist today. And they tend to also be more precise. So this is why they wanted tactical nukes in Belarus as a threat, as a distinct threat to Warsaw, Vilnius, and Kiev, not to make a move on Belarus. Strategic nukes, they have less utility in that respect. They are for the purpose of deterrence, whereas a tactical nuke can reach its destination in just a couple minutes within range, within the short range, and this move to move tactical nukes there probably was some sort of agreement made between Lukashenko and Vladimir Putin, saying you're going to allow us to use your country as a staging ground for our invasive activities, and we will provide you tactical nuclear cover, because they're not going to forfeit the control of the tactical nukes to the Belarusians. They are going to remain in control and use them as leverage to keep all of the surrounding Baltic states at bay. Okay, so Lukashenko comes out today and he says that he has intel, and he wants you to trust him, that NATO is planning on invading Belarus. Now, you got to take everything with a grain of salt, But when there's so much propaganda moving back and forth, and guys, we know how much the government loves to lie to us as well, you gotta hear everybody out. I'm not saying you take it to the bank and you believe it, but there might be some truth to that. And if you've been paying attention to this channel for a long time, you know that the borders between Belarus and Ukraine have been mined to high heaven. Bridges have been blown. Blockades have been set up. In Poland, the Polish borders have been limited severely between Belarus and Poland. And there appears to be concentration of forces right now in the eastern part of NATO in terms of offensive forces as well as air defense. So, you know, suffice it to say, there may in fact be something to that. Now, the Trump arraignment is taking place next week. He's being brought up on more charges than originally thought. Of course, he's probably going to plead not guilty to these charges. I presume this is the media circus they've all been waiting for. You know, I went and I grabbed, excuse me, screenshots from all of the big 5 major news networks: ABC, CBS, Fox News, NBC, and CNN. And they all said the exact same thing, the same bold letters. It's like they're all getting their information from the same 2 mainstream media conglomerates, the Associated Press and Reuters or whatever it is, but they all come out with the same information on the same day and understand that they need Trump to be president again because nobody cares about the mainstream media. Nobody trusts them. Unfortunately, people are so fickle and so easily led by the nose that they will, you know, that people are going to get in a fluff over this and there's going to be riots and civil unrest and possibly civil war. So what can you do? All you can do is keep on prepping and try to stay outside the mob. Even if it's a mob you're cheering for, mobs are never good. Okay, nothing good happens in a large group of people. People only get dumber in large groups of people. Now, we got a travel advisory still in place. Well, it's been in place for over a year and a half now from the United States telling their population not to go to Russia. And if you're in Russia, get the hell out of Russia. This has been reiterated once again as a result of a Wall Street Journal journalist being arrested on espionage charges in Russia. Now, there's been some calls in the United States to kick out the Russian ambassador. Of course, this would be an extreme escalation, and Biden said that he won't do this, at least not right now. You can really not take anything Biden says as fact because he could change his mind tomorrow. But there is this travel advisory in place, and there is diplomats being expelled from Russia today. I believe there were Estonia and Latvia. So pretty much all of the diplomats, the actual ambassadors to the country, have been kicked out of the Baltic states and Russia. So that's like what happens right before you go to war with a country, okay? And I think Russia is starting to get concerned about some of its diplomats and ambassadors out there, and they're calling them back. And that's a huge red flag for escalation. Now, YouTube sent me an email. It wasn't bad. I'm not banned yet. But the way things are going, I might be, because Bill C-11, and if YouTube is telling you to protest something, then you know it's probably serious. Bill C-11 is something which is being, well, it's passed already. It's got one more Senate hearing, Senate vote to pass, and then it's going to be officially law. And this is going to drastically give the government so many draconian powers in terms of their ability to regulate online content, even social media content. Everybody is speaking out against this. Left, right, it doesn't matter. I need you guys to do me a favor. If anybody, you know, famous or influential or anybody who can pull some strings, who watches this channel, if you have a way of getting me in touch with Pierre Poilievre, the conservative leader who currently is speaking out against this thing, because the NDP and the Liberals, they're pushing forward with this thing. They really want it. For some reason, they want to regulate the internet. Of course, they're doing it under the guise of helping out the little guy, helping out minorities, blah, blah, blah. We don't need help. I mean, look at what has come out of Canada in the last 10 years without any of the government help. You have the world's biggest superstars. You got Drake. You got Justin Bieber. You got The Weeknd. Do you really think they need Justin Blackface Trudeau to help them get known about in the world. No, we don't need your help. I don't want to be one of the black creators that's promoted, because it's going to mess with the algorithm and it's actually going to end up badly for lots of content creators. Anyways, I wanted to get that out of the way from the start, because if you guys are well connected, if any of you are well connected enough to get me in touch with Pierre so we can have him on the channel for just 5 or 10 minutes, not only would it be an honor, because he's a cool dude. I gotta admit, like, I'm not one to get political, but the guy's got charisma, and I can't say I disagree with a whole lot of what he says. I do disagree with a few things, but if you know any ways that I can get in touch with him to have him on the channel to talk about just this very important issue, it would be greatly appreciated. Contact me at CanadianPrepper@hotmail.com, okay? Now, on the topic of seeds, guys, this is where that seed vault, one of those seed vaults, is located. You can get these seeds, CanadianPreparedness.com, Limitless Growth. We got a bunch of different varieties. This one is 15,000 seeds, 36 different varieties. You want to make sure that you have something in there which is a dense carbohydrate, okay? Even if it's corn or something like that. And a lot of those ones, they have that. A lot of these, of course, are going to be things that are maybe high nutrient value, but not a lot of calorie value, which is why you got to go watch our videos on growing potatoes and things of that nature, because you do still need those calorie-dense foods, okay? But this Russian Doomsday Seed Vault thing, I mean, you know, it's to be expected at this point. It's nothing really out of the ordinary. The government's been doing this for a long time, and I really do think that some of the biggest seed vaults we don't even know about. I mean, if I was the government and I had the black budget to play with that they did, they would put a few million aside to build several seed vaults that are probably far more comprehensive and well-maintained than the Svalbard seed vault. So we got, what do we got going on here? Yeah, 50,000 North Korean commandos. Commandos, not just conscripts, but commandos, prepared to join Russia's special military ops in Ukraine. According to a military correspondent, a Russian state TV war correspondent has claimed this is according to Eurasia Times. Now, they tend to be a fairly credible news source, okay? They don't really publish anything that doesn't have at least a kernel of truth to it. So I would venture to say, and if I was Kim Jong-un and I had a lot of human resources and I didn't have enough food to feed them with, I would consider sending my guys to fight. Now, here's the problem with that. From a logistics perspective, I'm not a military person, but I'm going to go out on a limb to say that if your armies aren't interoperable and you speak an entirely different language, it's probably not going to work. Just a hunch. What do I know? But I'm presuming that command and control would be very confusing if you had a bunch of North Koreans just thrown into this fight alongside other Russians. Now, obviously, they would be separated. The divisions or brigades of North Koreans probably holding down one spot and that sort of thing. But you probably wouldn't get a whole lot of mixing going on. But it would be incredibly confusing just with the language barrier alone. Now, maybe they would go there and serve in some capacity, maybe to do some kind of work. But you would think from the Russians' point of view, it would probably be more of a liability when you really think about it, because it's just more manpower that you have to manage, then you got to divvy up resources which are probably already in short supply. You don't know how well these guys can fight. I'm sure, you know, the North Koreans are tough people, you know, they have to be. And of course, but the thing with this too is, does Kim Jong-un want to export 50,000 guys, right? Because the whole idea is to keep everybody trapped in this prison, this authoritarian prison that they've created. And if you send them all out into the world, they start to get a feel that, hey, this world isn't what the great leader has told us it was, right? So I'm not putting a whole lot of stock into this, but at the same time, it's very plausible. They got a lot of manpower, and the Chinese are mobilizing, and that's the other thing. This, of course, would have to be approved by the Chinese if it had a hope in hell of actually materializing. But again, this could just be some sort of threat. You know, this could be a veiled threat to the United States and the Ukrainians, that if this continues, we will start seeking help from other places. Now, we got Lukashenko saying that NATO plans to invade Belarus. Sorry about the screen, guys. I know it's hard on the eyes for some people. It's moving around, but it is what it is. Self-proclaimed president of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, said in a message to the Belarusian people that NATO countries are preparing for an invasion of Belarusian territory. Take my word for it, he says. I've never lied to you. They, countries, are preparing to invade the territory of Belarus to destroy our country. The Belarusian dictator explained his statement by saying that today he believes NATO troops are being deployed at an accelerated pace in an eastern direction. According to his estimates, the bloc's grouping in Poland and the Baltic states alone has more than 21,000 military personnel. This is not their entire military, but the ones that are in the eastern direction, as he says. 250 tanks and 500 armored vehicles and about 150 aircraft and helicopters. Still peanuts by comparison to what the Ukrainians started out with and what they still have. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe there's something to it. Maybe not, but they are ready to deploy strategic weapons to stave off the Western threat. But I don't think that this matters as long as they have that pact between Russia, which they obviously do if they're letting Russia use their country as a launch pad and the Russians are giving them tactical nukes. They're already under Russia's strategic nuclear umbrella, so they don't need this. Again, if you want to understand the utility of tactical nuclear weapons, go and watch our video that we did a few days ago. We're talking about that very thing. I'm not going to go over that again, but yeah. And there's talks about peacekeepers in Ukraine. And of course, I think I've spoken about this in the past, but the idea is that they may, as part of some sort of truce or peace deal, want to send peacekeepers into Ukraine. And that, of course, would come with all sorts of risks of potential escalation. Nothing would surprise me at this point. We have Russian ambassadors to Latvia and Estonia relieved of their duties. And of course, Russia has been calling back a lot of their diplomats. Okay, and you only do this if you're ready to really go to war with the country. This is a list of all of the diplomats that have been expelled, not a list, but a graph from Russian diplomats that have been expelled from the United States, 223 in just the last 2 years, okay? And that number is probably going up quite a bit on a daily basis. Now, I wanted to briefly talk about this. I got this email from YouTube about Bill C-11 because it's going to change the face of the internet here in Canada. Even though the government says, don't worry, we're not going to regulate social media content. We're not going to regulate YouTube content creators. We're not going to mess with the algorithm. But there was an amendment made by the Conservatives and many other people who disagreed with it, which tried to have an amendment in there so that it would not pertain to social media content creators. And the government rejected that amendment. But they did put in another amendment, or they did reject another amendment, I should say, amendment which would have required companies to verify users' ages before they allow access to sexually explicit material online. And a change that would have prohibited CBC from producing sponsored content, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. Okay, so they're okay with people, with young children, having access to sexually explicit material, but they want to regulate freedom of speech. They want to regulate what we as content creators can say. That says it all. Okay? This right here is the face of a man. This is the, what is he, like the culture minister, Canada's heritage minister. This is like a man who knows what he's doing is wrong, but, you know, he's just going to do it anyway. He's a guy who's just taken orders, right? And if YouTube is sending me messages to protest this, you know it's serious when one of the biggest tech corporations is contacting creators like myself, of all people, who tends to be somewhat anti-establishment, then you know it's deadly serious. Okay, so we have about, I think, another couple weeks before this is likely passed in the Senate and becomes law to protest against it. Of course, Pierre Poilievre is accusing the Liberals of censoring the debate on Bill C-11. So there's a lot of opposition to this, okay? Much like the gun bill that they attempted to put through, there's a whole lot of opposition. So it's not just, you know, your run-of-the-mill tinfoil hat people screaming about the NWO. It's, you know, upstanding politicians who toe the party line who are saying this is ridiculous. Even liberals, even people in the NDP are saying that this is not, you know, people who've been lifelong progressives are saying that this is very dystopian. Now, like I've said, we don't need the government's help. And I say we because they're talking about black content creators here. Of course, they always try to use minorities when it's convenient, and I absolutely despise this. And I can say this because, yes, I'm a melanated person. I don't really like the term black. I think it's a little outdated, not in a woke sense, but just in the sense of I'm not black. Do I look black? No, I'm a melanated person. I'm a biracial individual. And on Thursday evening, the House agreed to adopt Senate amendments that would reinforce the promotion of Indigenous languages and black content creators. Guess what? We don't need that. One of the best Indigenous bands, A Tribe Called Red, didn't ask the government for help to be known all around the country and in many places in the world. They make excellent music. The Weeknd, Drake, these guys did not need the government to help them get recognized. I mean, this is just stupid. This is clearly just a Trojan horse for the government to come in and regulate the crap out of everything under the guise of helping minorities. I mean, guys, this is the most sinister, evil thing. You know, it's one thing to be a purveyor of these types of draconian laws. It's another thing altogether to do it under the guise of trying to help people. That's just bullshit, especially from Captain Blackface. So anyways, that's all I got to say about that. If you guys, you know, can get me connected with Mr. Poilievre, that would be great. I think he's a pretty down-to-earth dude, and I'm pretty sure, you know, we'd have a quick conversation. It wouldn't be off the rails or anything like that. I think he would agree. I think we would agree about a lot, which is not to say we would agree about everything. That's 110% for sure, and that's the case with most politicians. Anyways, guys, I got to bounce. It's Friday, and I need a day off. Stay tuned tomorrow because we got Peter Schiff coming on the channel. We're going to talk all about the state of the current financial system. Thanks for watching. Canadian Prepper out.